Joan Bakewell. Joan Bakewell built a strong reputation as a broadcaster and journalist who wasn't afraid to probe the core of social issues. She was raised in an era where religious services and doctrines were woven into everyday British life. But she gradually found that a purely faith-based view didn't satisfy her curiosity. Instead, Bakewell championed critical inquiry, encouraging people to test beliefs against modern knowledge. On her programs, she often explored existential themes, from ethics in medicine to shifting cultural norms, all without simply deferring to divine authority. She argued that clinging to centuries-old dogma can leave vital questions unanswered. While not overtly combative, Bakewell used her platform to highlight alternatives to traditional religious thinking. Her measured style resonated with audiences seeking nuanced discussions, especially women who felt constrained by certain religious expectations. Over time, Bakewell's perspective served as a bridge for viewers torn between the comfort of familiar rites and the call of progressive ideas. She remains a notable voice for balanced debate in a landscape often dominated by extremes. Woody Allen's films are loaded with existential dread, humor, and endless questions about love, mortality, and the meaning of life. This creative blend comes from a man who's long claimed he doesn't follow a structured religion. Although raised in a Jewish family, Allen gravitated more toward comedic skepticism than to synagogue teachings. He frequently jokes about how implausible he finds the concept of a divine overseer, comparing it to intangible fantasies. This attitude seeps into scripts that feature characters agonizing over God's silence and humanity's absurd place in the universe. His comedic style, laden with neuroses, highlights the cosmic mismatch between human desire and random fate. Over decades of filmmaking, Allen rarely suggested a spiritual resolution. Instead, he left characters and viewers with unanswered questions, implying that perhaps no definitive answers exist. While some interpret this as nihilism, Allen has described it more as a pragmatic acceptance of life's mysteries. Rather than rely on any holy text, he leans on wit and a sense of irony to cope with the unpredictable nature of existence. George Carlin's comedy routines turned societal norms upside down, and religion was one of his favorite targets. He had an uncanny knack for turning a stand-up set into a philosophical challenge. Carlin would describe religious belief, especially the idea of an invisible man in the sky, as something he found both bizarre and oddly funny. Rather than simply mocking believers, he encouraged everyone to question how they came to hold certain truths. He delivered these ideas with a raw, brash style peppered with comedic profanity, which some found refreshing and others found offensive. Carlin saw strict religious doctrines as a hindrance to genuine intellectual freedom. Yet, in between the laughter, he conveyed a serious point. We should rely on real-world evidence and logic instead of tradition or fear. His confrontational approach helped normalize open skepticism in mainstream entertainment, ushering in a new wave of comedians who felt emboldened to challenge authority. Carlin's legacy endures, proving that humor can cut through even the most revered institutions to spark deeper conversations. Alan Scarf. Alan Scarf started out in a deeply religious household, but his ongoing engagement with theater, literature, and film propelled him toward a more secular worldview. As an actor and writer, he found that creativity and intellectual pursuits offered richer explanations of life's mysteries than did the strictly observed routines he'd known as a child. Through roles that demanded empathy, insight, and even moral ambiguity, Scarf discovered that humanity's true complexity can't be summed up in a single dogmatic lens. Over time, he became comfortable voicing doubts about inherited faith, sharing how each new production introduced him to fresh perspectives. Colleagues noted that he brought a depth to his performances, fueled by a perpetual sense of inquiry. Scarf rarely attacked religion outright, but made it clear that blind belief wasn't for him. He preferred to search for meaning in hands-on, experiential ways through travel, collaboration, and ongoing education, rather than in the pages of a sacred text. This steady shift away from rigid doctrine solidified Scarf's belief that art often uncovers truth more intimately than formal religion ever could. Paul Verhoeven's films might be best known for their edgy violence or provocative scenes, but they also reflect a director who has questioned traditional religious claims. Raised with standard faith teachings, he gradually grew skeptical as he saw the disconnect between religious ideals and the real-world complexities of power, sexuality, and politics. Movies like RoboCop and Basic Instinct challenge viewers to confront moral ambiguity rather than rely on any established moral code. Verhoeven has mentioned in interviews that he's more intrigued by what people do under extreme circumstances than by stories of miraculous interventions. This fascination with human behavior fuels his cinematic style, which can come across as cynical or harsh to some. Yet behind it lies a fundamental question. If humans alone are responsible for their actions, does religion help or hinder progress? By weaving these themes into mainstream releases, Verhoeven prodded audiences to question whether centuries-old doctrines fit into modern, rapidly changing societies. While critics often focus on his film's shock value, Verhoeven maintains that pushing boundaries is crucial if art is to remain honest. Ian Smith built his career writing television scripts and working in soap operas, largely in Australia. Although he grew up with the routine of religious services, Smith found his imagination blossomed more vibrantly when unbounded by dogma. As he began crafting fictional worlds filled with love triangles, betrayals, and personal epiphanies, he saw a parallel to real life. People were figuring things out on their own terms, not necessarily looking to a higher authority. Over time, Smith realized he no longer believed in the strict doctrines he'd once taken for granted. His approach became more curious, incorporating new social ideas and psychological insights into his storytelling. He felt that authentic human dilemmas offered more profound lessons than any sermon could. Audiences responded well, sensing the down-to-earth perspective in his plots and characters. By prioritizing evidence from everyday experiences and an openness to new ideas, Smith helped pave the way for storylines that weren't afraid to question cultural norms, including religion's place in modern society. Terry Wogan's gentle, warm style made him a beloved figure in British media. Raised amid strong Catholic customs, he gradually found himself drifting from rigid rituals as he interviewed countless people with differing views. During his radio shows, Wogan showed a natural curiosity for all angles, asking thoughtful questions without rushing to moral judgments. He admitted that while traditions can be comforting, he wasn't convinced they held the ultimate key to life's truths. Wogan valued kindness and empathy, traits he believed transcended denominational lines. Instead of using the airwaves to promote a single worldview, he welcomed everyone, clergy, skeptics, and spiritual seekers alike, to share experiences. As a result, He facilitated dialogues that reflected the changing religious landscape of his time. By spotlighting diverse perspectives, Wogan illustrated how open-mindedness can enrich public conversation. His transition from a devout upbringing to a more relaxed stance on faith paralleled the shifts many of his listeners were undergoing, making him all the more relatable and cherished. William B. Davis. William B. Davis may be best known for his portrayal of a mysterious figure on a cult sci-fi show, yet his own journey away from religious belief was hardly as dramatic. Raised with a typical moral framework, he gradually became a firm supporter of scientific inquiry. His interest in logic and evidence-based reasoning pulled him toward a secular mindset, one that questioned the reliability of ancient scriptures and intangible claims. Davis never framed his stance as a rebellious act. Rather, he saw it as the logical outcome of a thorough, open-minded evaluation of the world. In interviews, he stressed the importance of staying curious and continuously learning, noting that these qualities often clash with the idea of accepting unquestioned dogmas. While he doesn't deny that religion can bring comfort, Davis insists that personal and societal progress emerge from confronting reality's complexities head-on. His calm, measured delivery of these opinions aligns well with his on-screen persona, leaving a subtle but lasting impression about the value of thinking for oneself. Paul Daniels. Paul Daniels was a charismatic magician whose performances captivated audiences by blending humor with sleight of hand. Growing up, he had the usual exposure to religious customs, but as he honed his craft, he realized that life's real magic might have less to do with faith and more to do with creativity and showmanship. Daniels believed in hard work and the playful manipulation of reality, two elements he found more rewarding than rehearsing or reciting doctrine. His comedic barbs occasionally poked at religious institutions, though he rarely took a hostile tone. Instead, he treated them as part of the wide array of human customs, neither exalted nor demonized. Over time, he came to see reason, inquiry, and a good laugh as more reliable paths to personal satisfaction than weekly church visits. Audiences adored his approach, perhaps because his illusions and witty perspectives made them question what's truly real, both on stage and in life. In his later interviews, Daniels underscored that skepticism isn't the enemy of wonder. It can actually heighten our sense of awe by freeing us to explore without preconceptions. Sir Ian McKellen's commanding presence often brings to mind beloved fantasy sagas and iconic Shakespearean roles. But away from the spotlight, McKellen charted a thoughtful route concerning religion. He was reared in a setting where church attendance was expected, yet it didn't take long for him to notice inconsistencies between religious teachings and the real world around him. Over the years, his experiences, both on stage and in activism, shaped a worldview centered on empathy, equality, and the universal right to question norms. He acknowledged that many individuals find solace in spiritual communities, yet maintained that for him, human connection and compassionate engagement trumped dogmatic rules. McKellen often credits literature for revealing deeper truths about morality than any single scripture. Far from condemning all belief, he simply favored open exploration over rigid adherence. Fans appreciate not just his masterful performances, but also his stance that real growth happens when curiosity and skepticism aren't shamed. This evolution in outlook allowed him to become a strong advocate for various social causes, underscoring that moral responsibility arises from within rather than being mandated from on high. Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee is celebrated worldwide for revolutionizing martial arts and action cinema, yet his philosophical outlook was every bit as groundbreaking. Although he encountered various religious perspectives growing up, Lee declared he had no religious affiliation, underscoring his preference for personal discipline over spiritual doctrine. He was fond of saying, "Absorb what is useful, discard what is not," a principle he applied as much to living as to fighting. Rather than adhere to a single school of thought, he combined influences from Chinese philosophies, Western boxing, and even psychology. His unwavering emphasis on self-improvement through martial arts resonated deeply with fans seeking alternatives to rigid spiritual models. Lee believed that truth revealed itself through focused practice and self-analysis, not through ceremonial rituals. By forging his own philosophical path, one that championed adaptability, open-mindedness, and constant growth, he shattered the limitations imposed by tradition. To this day, aspiring martial artists and regular fans alike find inspiration in Lee's message that authenticity flourishes when we rely on our inner drive instead of external decrees. Patrick Stewart's journey from a working-class upbringing in England to global acclaim involved re-examining everything he'd once taken for granted, including religion. Early on, he was introduced to a conventional belief system that stressed obedience, but as he matured, Stewart increasingly leaned on logic and empathy to guide him. He often cites his theater background as influential, explaining that it opens new emotional and intellectual horizons. Interacting with diverse roles and colleagues led him to question doctrines that implied unchanging truths. Stewart believes morality is shaped by evolving human understanding, not carved into stone by cosmic dictates. This perspective permeates his roles, whether he's portraying a starship captain grappling with ethical dilemmas or performing Shakespeare's most challenging lines on stage. His calm and reflective manner off-camera also reveals a man who holds kindness and fairness in higher esteem than dogmatic ritual. By openly discussing these views, Stewart has encouraged many fans to think about whether inherited beliefs truly align with their own evolving sense of right and wrong. Peter Fonda gained fame for his countercultural spirit, most notably in Easy Rider, which itself symbolized rebellion against America's entrenched traditions, including religious norms. He came from a Hollywood dynasty, but that never stopped him from forging his own unique identity. In a time when public figures often downplayed dissent, Fonda openly admitted he didn't align with mainstream faith. Instead, he explored the realms of personal freedom, creativity, and social change. He questioned whether formal church structures could handle society's rapid transformations or do justice to the soul-searching he considered essential for any individual. His films and interviews suggested that life's biggest truths emerge from lived experiences, from traveling, meeting new people, and testing one's boundaries. Fonda's skepticism gave him an enduring appeal among those who also felt hemmed in by tradition. Long after the counterculture wave subsided, he remained an advocate for exploring uncharted paths, arguing that self-awareness and empathy carry more weight in shaping behavior than subscribing to centuries-old religious customs.